we're joined by Ambassador Hesham Yousseff, Senior Advisor at the European Institute of Peace and former senior official at the Arab League, and a veteran diplomat who spent decades working on the Arab-Israeli conflict. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being here with us on the program. So this foreign affairs piece says the US-Israel relationship is no longer just special, it is now exceptional in ways that undermine US interests and devastate Palestinian lives. Do you think that's an accurate description?
Absolutely.
Could you explain more about why you think that?
Well, the United States has been treating Israel in a manner that it hasn't treated any country in the world. However close they are, even NATO members do not enjoy this relationship. Even countries like Great Britain, France, Germany, you name it, US close allies have not been treated in the manner in which Israel has been treated. And we can see that every single day. It is in relation to what the United States allows Israel to do all over the region in a manner that is, unsustainable and will not serve neither the US interests nor the Israeli interests. And this is what I think is becoming more and more realized by public opinion in the United States. And this is why we have seen demonstrations all over the country in the last 2 years. And despite all kinds of pressures by both the Biden administration, then the Trump administration, to curtail all these demonstrations in different universities, in different cities, and so on. And still, people and polls indicate that the place in which Israel was in relation to the support that was provided by public opinion in the US is no longer there.
And you've worked, of course, inside Arab diplomacy for years. So when Washington shields Israel at the UN and continues this massive military aid despite the destruction of Gaza, what message is that sending to the region?
Well, the message is very negative, and this is why I think the United States started changing its attitude somewhat, but it still falls very short. And this is why Trump publicly indicated to Netanyahu, in as far as the region is concerned and the world is concerned, he told him, you can't fight the whole world. And also in relation to the US, he told him, Israel used to enjoy bipartisan support in Congress, and this is no longer the case. I wouldn't have imagined a few years back that I would hear the kind of criticism towards Israel that I hear today in Congress. And at the same time, there are all kinds of difficulties that are associated with this issue because Israel is using American weapons in a manner that is not in conformity with American laws. And this, of course, is, some in Congress are willing to accept that, but there are those who are saying, no, this is not, should not be accepted, and measures should be taken. So we will see how things evolve. But I think for the time being, the exceptionalism that Israel is enjoying will continue for a while until things evolve in a manner that would result in a more fundamental change in US policy, because I don't see this shift happening until now.
Well, this article calls for what it says, what it calls normalization of the relationship, applying US law on human rights, stopping the conditioning on aid, setting clear red lines on annexation and settlements. In the unlikely event that that actually happens, what would that look like on the ground in Gaza and the West Bank, do you think?
Well, as you said, in the unlikely case that this happens, because it will not happen. So this is theoretically, you can, contemplate that. But what we are seeing is exactly the opposite. What we're seeing is that the United States allowed Israel, after the first ceasefire in January, before Trump enters into office, allowed Israel to continue the war once against in March, because Israel persuaded Trump that the only solution is a military solution. And then he gave them time from March until October. And then he told them, well, it's not working. But then even after the ceasefire, they gave them a free hand to continue, and the ceasefire not only in Gaza, but also in Lebanon. So they allowed them to continue attacks and freedom of action, both in Gaza and in the West Bank and in Lebanon and in Syria. And well, more recently, 2 days ago or so, Trump indicated to Israel that no, this is going a little too far in relation to Syria, because Syria doesn't constitute any threat to Israel, yet the attacks are coming in every day. So we will see what the reaction of Israel would be in relation to the public criticism by President Trump in relation to what Israel is doing to Syria.
And you mentioned
We have
before.
also seen
Continue.
one other point. We have also seen what's happening on the humanitarian front. So an agreement was reached in January in relation to humanitarian needs, and then reconfirmed in the recent ceasefire agreement. But then we are seeing reports indicating that only 25% of those commitments made by Israel in these agreements are allowed inside Gaza. So the humanitarian situation is going down the drain, and the United States hasn't been doing anything, and people are being killed at the same time during the ceasefire, and the United States also hasn't criticized Israel at all. So it hasn't criticized Israel for all its practices in Gaza since the war started. So this applies both to Biden and Trump. And also they have not criticized them for anything that they have done in Lebanon as well.
And you mentioned before the changing in attitudes with the political class, but also we're seeing rising anger among younger Americans, including Jewish Americans as well, over Gaza. If US policy doesn't change, do you think the relationship with Israel could actually eventually face a real rupture from the ground up?
I don't think so, because at the end of the day, we saw what the attitude of the administration was exactly the opposite. Not to say to Israel, we are facing public pressure, so you have to rectify your policies. No, the answer was, okay, we'll try to stop these demonstrations. So instead of trying to see, that these young people are justified in what they're doing, no, they did exactly the opposite. They are going to Israel and saying that don't go that far, but it is okay what is happening. But also, it is not only that. It is some additional fundamental policies that were publicly indicated by the United States. One of them is that you have the President of the United States saying that Israel is too small and we have to see how we make it bigger. So how do you think Israel can be made bigger except at the expense of its neighbors? So if this is the policy of the US, do you think that this is heeding to what the young people, including young Jewish people who are saying, well, not in our name, but still the administration is saying no. And then you see also their attitude, as you mentioned, in the United Nations, but not only in the United Nations, in the United Nations and with the International Criminal Court and with the International Court of Justice and with any legal effort that is done at the international level in order to, put pressure to bear on Israel to abide by international law. So if we expect that something dramatic will happen in U.S. policy in as far as Israel is concerned, I don't think that it will be coming in the near future.
The piece also argues that unconditional support has empowered Netanyahu's most extreme partners, people who openly reject Palestinian rights and any democratic checks. How widespread is that kind of view in Israel, would you say?
Well, of course, there are those in Israel who are saying that the US should change its policy, but there are those who are saying, well, this is our opportunity. And this is why they were trying to achieve mass displacement of Palestinians. Why did they try to achieve mass displacement of Palestinians? Because they felt that this would be acceptable by the Trump administration. And he even presented his idea of the Gaza Riviera and so on, and asking all Palestinians to leave so that we can rebuild Gaza and allow whoever we want to return and not allow whoever we don't want to return and so on. So this has been continued. So inside Israel, there are those who are saying that what's happening is not in the interest of Israel, but then there are those who are quite happy with what's happening. And we're also seeing more recently, in as far as the Israeli internal situation is concerned, the Trump administration interfering in the court cases that Netanyahu is facing. So he asked the president publicly when he was making a statement in the Knesset for a pardon. And the president and sent a letter to the president of Israel in this regard. And the president responded to him, to President Trump, saying that in order for this to happen, Netanyahu has to present a request. So Netanyahu presented the request, and there is a huge debate in Israel on whether, as a result of this pardon, he should depart from politics or not. So there are changes that are going to happen as a result of different dynamics, both inside Israel and inside the United States. And of course, as you well know, there are midterm elections that are going to take place in the US next year. And there are elections that are supposed to be held in Israel in October of next year as well. So we are in an election period for both countries, in a sense, one of them for Congress, and the second is for the Knesset. So this will result in all kinds of dynamics that may make things somewhat better in some aspects and somewhat worse from other aspects, because this is electioneering time.
So what kind of US-Israel relationship do you think would actually help stabilize Gaza, the region, and also protect states that are neighboring, like Egypt and Jordan and Lebanon?
Well, to heed to what the article says about normalizing relations so that it becomes a normal relation, just like between any two countries around the world. But no, this is not a normal relations like any relations in the world. Israel is not a poor country. Israel has per capita income of over $50,000. And despite that, you see that the United States, and this was during the Obama administration, who was somewhat critical on Israel, to have a memorandum of understanding that allowed Israel to benefit from $40 billion over 10 years. And this is up for renewal in next year. So we will see how the US will deal with this issue. And in the meantime, as a result of the war on Gaza, $17.9 billion, almost $18 billion, were given to Israel in weapons and other facilities and so on to help in the war on Gaza. So can you imagine 18 billions to fight Gaza and to help Israel in this regard, in addition to the 40 million that was being paid will be renewed or not renewed, and in what way, and the kind of benefits that Israel will get as a result of the new memorandum of understanding. It's a huge issue, and this is coming at a time when you have elections in Congress and elections in Israel. So it will be a very interesting development to see how this will evolve in relation to the situation in both countries. Because there are people in the United States that are saying we shouldn't be paying all this money to Israel for whatever purpose. Yes, we can help them; they are our allies and so on, but not to that extent.
And finally, Mr. Ambassador, of course, for decades, Palestinians have paid the highest of prices for this exceptional relationship between Washington and Tel Aviv. Do you believe it is still possible to salvage a just political settlement?
Well, as long as the Palestinians are willing to continue to fight occupation, historically, what we have seen throughout history, that occupations end. And this occupation is no exception, particularly when you see the kind of actions that are being done by the Palestinians. They have endured what, no other people have endured in the last 50 years or so. So what we have seen is unbelievable, and they have not been getting the help that they deserve, whether it's in relation to humanitarian help or pressure on Israel to stop the kind of killing that was ongoing. We have seen what is happening in the International Court of Justice, saying that this is plausible genocide and so on. So this is what we have been witnessing. But then the kind of pressure that is being exerted comes nowhere near what is required in relation to the kind of atrocities that are being witnessed in Gaza. But mind you, this is not only about Gaza. It is about Gaza, it's about the West Bank, it is about Lebanon, it's about Syria, it is about how Israel, and now they are threatening also to, to have military attacks on Iraq and sending a message to Iraq through the Americans that Iraq has to be careful because it may be attacked as well. This is, a country that is really getting out of control in relation to what it is doing in terms of attacks on its neighbors and in the region as a whole.
Well, Ambassador Hesham Yousseff, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your long experience with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.